We are coming up on the high holiday season, and the theme of high holidays is forgiveness. So around this time of year, I occasionally speculate on a gaping wound afflicted on our collective body. And I always wonder if that wound will be too big to heal. Not only was I thinking about that question this week, what happens when there are actions taken by people that cannot be undone, but this week we saw shootings practically in our own backyard at Cook's Corner. You can almost see it from here. It's at the base of Majeska Canyon over there. And we should ask ourselves, how do we respond to these tragedies? Do we respond with despondency or with hope? It's a tough question. So I want to discuss this in the rabbinic way, by way of a test case. And that test case is, should a rabbi drive a German car? If this touches a nerve for you, if you've heard this question, should a rabbi drive a German car before, just put your hand up. Have you ever run into this anywhere? Some of you have. So let me be explicit. I ask the question because since the Shoah, that is the Holocaust, there has been a generally held opinion that rabbis should not drive German cars. Mercedes, BMW, Volkswagen, we're not supposed to drive them. Why not, you may be asking yourselves? Because according to some of us, we should maintain a permanent state of what we would call, what is now called boycott, divestment, and sanctions against Germany as perpetrator of the Holocaust. In my experience, this viewpoint was most strongly held by the generations that were directly touched by the Shoah, who were the silent generation and their parents. And I remember hearing from my grandparents, my grandfathers who had fought in the Second World War, rabbis should not drive German cars. You shouldn't, no matter how nice the suspension is, no matter how fast 0 to 60, you shouldn't do it. Out of respect for our dead and dispossessed of the Third Reich, we should also not give Germany our tourism dollars or any of the German companies our money. And some Israeli Jews early on, right before and after the creation of the state, tried to remove German culture completely by banning Mozart and the speaking of German in many quarters. This was the generation that experienced the Holocaust. The view that the rabbi should not drive a German car is less prevalent, though still prevalent, in the children of the silent generation, my baby boomer friends. This taboo is still fairly strong, but it's less pronounced. My baby boomer friends seem to be cool with Mozart, but still begrudge Richard Wagner. The composer Wagner, anybody? So there's still a little bit, and if you don't believe me, and if you want a data point, Curb Your Enthusiasm, right? Season 2, episode 3, when Larry David whistles a Wagner tune and he gets told he's an anti-Semite. So, should rabbis drive German cars? I guess we should first ask ourselves, did the German state try to apologize to us for the Holocaust? Did they try to give us reparations? Yes, they did. After the Second World War, the West German state began paying reparations to Jews within a decade of the end of the war and formally apologized. But for Jews at that time, the wound was still too fresh. The pain borne under Nazism was too proximate to feel good about any reparations, any public apology. And in 1951, there was a debate in the Knesset over the proposed reparations from West Germany to the State of Israel. And you can feel the pain of this generation summed up in the following interaction. Elimelech Remalt of the General Zionist Party was heard to say at this time when these debates were happening that his children said to him, "How much will we get for grandma and grandpa?" Blood money. And as controversial as it was, the reparations were accepted by the State of Israel, and controversial as this is to say, those reparations helped build the infrastructure to make Israel the state that it is today. There's no way of getting around the history of that. But then that means that the taboo about rabbis not driving German sports cars or sedans or electric cars or the vans that you can turn into a camper van, whatever your thing is that you like, does it hold up? Does the taboo hold up if the Germans tried to make amends? Does it hold up? Or is there something about Germany and Germans that deserves to be condemned forever? It's an open question. In this week's Torah portion, who knows what it is? Extra points you get out of Yom Kippur. Who knows what it is? Ki Tetzei, very good. Ki Tetzei, we're in Deuteronomy. Moses is giving his farewell speech. And as he's getting ready to say goodbye to the Israelites that he has shepherded through good times and bad, the question comes up. The Torah asks a version of the question I asked. You were just liberated from the hands of your oppressors. May an Israelite priest drive an Egyptian chariot? The Torah answers the question by saying, Deuteronomy 23:9, children born to the Egyptians may be admitted to the tribe, that is, they may become one of us after 3 generations. In other words, when you're 3 generations past the trauma of an event, in this case slavery, you can drive an Egyptian chariot. Because the wounds of slavery are not considered to be as fresh, and the national character of both the Egyptians and the Israelites will have changed in 3 generations. And you don't need to believe me because I'm going to quote another older rabbi at you, which is what we rabbis do to prove that we're right about something. I'm going to quote you someone named Hezkiah ben Manoach, also known by the title of his work, the Chizkuni, writing in the 13th century. That's CE. With Jewish text, you always have to say CE or BCE because you're never quite sure. So he says the following. The 3rd generation. Why does the Torah say you could admit them after the 3rd generation? Because at that point, the relationship to the original Egyptian culture during the time of slavery is no longer considered meaningful in the character development of their grandchildren and great-grandchildren. So does the Chizkuni agree that an Israelite priest may drive an Egyptian chariot? Yeah, you're with me so far? We're not done. It gets weird. Buckle up. Okay, so it's possible a few of you, any Mizrahi Jews here? Mizrahi Persian Jews? Okay. Some of you may be saying, in your head, if you're Mizrahi, but Rabbi Rosner, many Persian rabbis do drive a Mercedes. They love a good Mercedes. Leather interior, good suspension, nice when you park it in front of the synagogue, right? That's an excellent point, I might say. But why do Persian rabbis drive Mercedes? Because, does anyone know? You get out of 3 years of Yom Kippur if you know this one. Do you know? Who knows? You can guess. Yes. Correct. And there is a codicil on that. You get off of 1 of 2 days of Yom Kippur this year. Okay, so the deal is, historically, the Persian Jewish community were big fans of the Shah, of Iran. Very well supported and liked by the Shah and liked the Shah in return. And when they were expelled by the Ayatollahs, the expats got a little annoyed with the Ayatollahs, and because the Mercedes was the car of the Shah's family, they drive a Mercedes to stick it to the Ayatollahs. Has nothing to do with Nazism at all. Now, we must narrow our question. If this doesn't count for Persian Jews, and it doesn't count probably for Ethiopian Jews and Jews from Cochin, and Jews who, well, we'll come back to that in just a second. I don't want to give away the ending. So we can see now that the boycott by rabbis against German cars is not universal. Germans are not eternally, universally evil. It's mainly an American Ashkenazi Jewish custom. And I am a millennial. I am now 3 generations removed from the Holocaust. But not only am I 3 generations removed, but the Germans are 3 generations removed. And while Nazism left a mark on the German national psyche, many German millennials would balk at the idea that there's a German ethno-national character. They would say, that's last century, Grandpa, leave me alone. Very different. And interestingly, recently, lots of Germans have been converting to Judaism. So that Torah verse, remember that Torah verse where I said Egyptians can join the tribe after 3 generations? It may have been intended to read, Egyptians will want to join your tribe, because there is something deep in the human psyche about identifying with the people that your grandparents oppressed. So you may find a wave of Egyptians a few generations out wanting to become Jews. And in fact, you could speculate if the Torah is correct, then we should now see the same behavior from Germans, and not just from any Germans. One might speculate that even the descendants of Nazis, of prominent Nazis, might be trying to convert to Judaism after a few generations. And, as it turns out, from The Independent, March 2006, quote, the 49-year-old physiotherapist and descendant of Hermann Goering, Adolf Hitler's right-hand man, Matthias Goering, is wearing a Jewish skull cap and a Star of David pendant. After being brought up to despise the Jews, he embraced the faith. And although he has yet to formally convert, this is 2006, he keeps kosher, he celebrates Shabbat, and he's learning Hebrew. Mr. Goering also had positive feelings about the state of Israel. Quote, it feels like home. Israelis are so friendly. Even when they hear my name, they say they are thankful that I have taken the step and made contact with them. I'm going to pause for like 5 seconds for people to whisper to each other if you want. Okay. In my youth, the Shoah was a gigantic gaping wound in our collective body. And we were told it might never heal. Now, generations from the Shoah, now that the 3rd generation out are adults, the scar tissue is beginning to form. Make no mistake, anti-Semitism is alive and well, and neo-Nazis are a force to be reckoned with, but the association of it with the German state and German culture has diminished. This should give us enormous hope. Even the most intractable conflict can heal or start to heal after time and goodwill. Healing is possible between our national political parties, between the US and China, between Israel and its present collection of enemies, and there are many. And even existential crises like nuclear proliferation could be surmounted. There is hope if healing, even the tiniest little bits of healing that we're beginning to feel around the edges of the wound of the Shoah, if that's possible, then anything is possible. And this should be a cause for relief and hope. But in a world where you cannot sit and enjoy your $8 spaghetti under the stars at your favorite watering hole, there are moments when I opened up the news and I saw, when my wife sent me the article initially, that people were dying right over there being shot. There was a moment where there was a very bleak moment. Oh God, not here, not right over there. And then I thought about it and I thought, this is a wound that's going to affect these families for generations, but eventually it will heal, because if healing is possible around a wound like the Shoah, anything is possible. So yes, I believe, as a millennial Ashkenazi rabbi, I can drive a German car. At the same time, I believe that the Shoah was one of the most consequential and damaging events in Jewish history, and my own family tree is missing limbs because of Nazis. I've studied the Shoah. I've visited sites of martyrdom and deportation and mass graves, and I honor and respect the memory of the Shoah alongside the Kishinev pogrom, the Chmelnytsky massacre, Masada and Beitar and Pittsburgh. Other times when we have been wounded, like we were wounded during the Shoah. Yet I believe, despite all that I, a millennial Ashkenazi American Jewish rabbi, can drive a German car. All that being said, as it turns out, I drive a Toyota. Shabbat Shalom. Please rise for Aleinu.